My family expects me to forgive my brother after what he did to my fiancée at their house. I am 27 years old and my fiancée is 25. We met almost 7 years ago when we were both in college. We met through mutual friends and started dating about a year later. When I introduced her to my family, everyone was thrilled with her. Even my mother, who is usually quite reserved towards foreigners. Note, my mother and father are migrants, and since moving to the country where we live, they have always stayed closer to the local community, so in general, they are cautious towards people who do not belong to our community. At this point, I should mention my brother, who is 29 years old. Before the incident, he was a superhero to me. I always admired him because he was never afraid of the local guys and was always a protector for me and our younger sister, Yen, who is 22 years old. He always reminded us that we shouldn't lower our heads just because someone tries to get to us and that we have the same rights to live here as everyone else. When I introduced him to my girlfriend, they became good friends. Over time, my girlfriend became quite close with my family, especially with my brother and sister. She also interacted with my other relatives, went shopping with my sister and mother, played pool with me and my cousins, and attended every party my family organized. At one of these parties, my family and I got very drunk to the point where I fell asleep on the living room floor at my parents' house. When the party ended, my girlfriend started acting strangely, and when I asked her what was going on, she said, "I think your brother tried to kiss me." The shock from her words was so great that any effect of the alcohol disappeared, and I asked her to tell me everything that happened. She said that several guests went up to the roof to drink there and get some fresh air. Or something like that. Gradually everyone left, and in the end only she and my brother were left on the roof. They drank a little more, and while they were talking she noticed that he was staring at her intently. Suddenly he leaned in trying to kiss her, but she was quicker and dodged. The atmosphere became very awkward and she left. When she finished her story, I drove her home, and later I talked to my brother to find out what happened. He told me the same story, but from his point of view. He apologized, saying that he was so drunk that he didn't realize what he was doing, and he asked for forgiveness once more. Just the memories of that conversation make my blood boil. Because back then I thought it was just a minor incident, something that could be resolved through conversation and setting boundaries. I could never have imagined what would happen next. After what happened at that party, the relationship between my brother and me became strained. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was as politely as possible, as if we were strangers. The only person besides the three of us who knew what happened was my younger sister. One day when she was talking to my sister, I couldn't help but overhear her. The girl asked why my brother and I had grown apart, and then the girl told her everything. My girlfriend and I decided not to tell the rest of the family to avoid further rifts in relationships in a few months. After that, my mom organized a party, inviting many people, friends, relatives, and members of our community. At this party, my girlfriend met my brother again. At that moment, I thought enough time had passed since the kissing incident, and this could be the first step towards normalizing relations. At some point, I lost sight of her and started looking. I went around the entire party, but she was nowhere to be found, and I thought she might be with my sister. But something made me go upstairs. As I was going up the stairs, I started hearing strange noises coming from one of the rooms. Opening the door, I saw my brother pinning my girlfriend to the bed, covering her mouth and trying to put his hand under her dress while she resisted. I didn't hesitate for a second and immediately attacked my brother, starting to beat him. My girlfriend ran out of the room as quickly as she could and went downstairs for help. When my father and uncle came upstairs, I was still beating my brother. My father managed to separate us, but I kept insulting him and tried to hit again. Eventually, he separated us and took me out of the room while my uncles checked on my brother. Outside the door, my father asked me what the hell I was guilty of. I couldn't understand what he told me happened that made me act that way. It took me some time to find the words, but eventually, I said what I had just seen. How my brother was trying to rape my girlfriend, my father, as far as I understand, was in shock. For a while, he sat on the floor, put his hand to his forehead, and remained silent for about 10 minutes. Until my uncle called in to take my brother to the hospital. After my brother was taken away, I went to look for my girlfriend and found her with my sister. They were talking about what happened. I said goodbye to my sister, and we left for home. She didn't stop crying the whole way. She was confused, angry, and when we got home, she continued to cry until she fell asleep. This became her routine for a few days until she gradually was able to start speaking again. During those days, my family kept me updated on my brother's condition. I had broken his nose and dislocated his jaw. My mother was in denial, not believing that her son was capable of such a thing, but I didn't think much about it, as I understood that everyone reacts in their own way. To some extent, I even understood why Mom tried to justify my brother's actions. The last thing I heard about him after he got out of the hospital, everyone turned away from him for what he did. He was fired from his job and he left out. In the following weeks, I almost completely cut off any contact with the outside world and focused on helping my girlfriend. To put it mildly, she was coping with the situation as well as she could. She was still very scared of what had happened and was completely exhausted. She spent almost a month at home, but she had to go back to work. However, after a few hours she returned, saying she couldn't shake the feeling of threat, that she was in danger, and that at any moment someone might try to harm her. First update. Hello everyone, to be honest, I didn't expect to be writing an update. I just wanted to express my feelings, but I never expected to receive such support. I want to answer some questions that have come up. First of all, many people got the impression that I am going to forgive my brother. That will never happen. To be clear, I no longer have a brother. That person is dead to me. Secondly, not all members of my family think that my brother should be forgiven. Only a minority of them think so. I could easily stop communicating with all these people except for my parents. I also want to clarify that my sister is on my side. She is my fiance's best friend and the only one besides me who knows what she went through in the first month after the incident. Thirdly, for those who asked what I told my mom and dad, I directly stated that if I find out my brother is in town, I will never speak to them again. As for what my brother has been doing in recent years, according to my mom, he contacted her at the beginning of the pandemic. He moved to the other side of the country, changed his name and started going to therapy to one day make things right, to cope. Nonsense. Utter nonsense. I didn't ask anything more, and my sister also didn't ask our parents about him, so that's all we know. Someone also messaged me privately asking why my brother didn't end up in prison. I replied to that person, but I want to tell everyone about it. The main reason is that I beat my brother so badly that he had to be taken to the hospital. When I consulted with my lawyer friend, she said that if I sued my brother, he could file a counter-suit. I would have had to spend some time in prison. My then girlfriend would have had to testify, which she wasn't ready for at the time. At that moment, my priority was to support her. I wouldn't have been able to help her while in prison. The best we could do at that time was to get a restraining order for her. One of the reasons why I haven't posted an update earlier is because we were both busy obtaining this warrant. I didn't tell my parents about it, so if my brother suddenly showed up, he would just be taken to the local police station. Some of you mentioned that I wasn't in Kiev, but I was in Kiev. That my mom's behavior in this situation is related to the fact that, as I mentioned in the previous post, my girlfriend is not from our community. But I can assure you, that's not the case. Why did I decide to respond to my family? I already had a speech prepared for everyone who was going to ask. My brother, and for my parents, I prepared an ultimatum. To choose between their son, a person who tried to assault his brother's fiancée, or me and their daughter. But then I realized something else. Reading the comments on my previous post, I came across thoughts that made me consider a frightening possibility. The comments mainly concerned the fact that my brother was so confident that he tried to assault my fiancée in a house full of people, which, judging by my parents' reaction, possibly meant my brother had done something similar before, and even worse, that my parents were covering it up. This thought shook me. I had never considered such a possibility. It was obvious that I was thinking too much about it, and my fiancée asked me what I was pondering. When I told her that perhaps my brother had already tried or even done something similar with other girls in the past, she also felt a chill run down her spine. After that, we talked to my sister and then started asking other family members, those who supported me, friends and members of our community, if they had noticed anything strange in my brother's behavior before the incident. At that moment, no one in my family recalled my brother exhibiting such behavior. But with friends, the situation was different. Some of them remembered that my brother was particularly courteous with the girlfriends or female acquaintances of other family members, sometimes overly intrusive, but nothing serious enough to mention that I didn't know about the attempted rape. And then my sister got in touch with the sister of my brother's ex-girlfriend. She said that my brother behaved very strangely with her family. When he was dating her sister, she noticed that she was extremely quiet in his presence. She also mentioned that my brother excessively flirted with her. We also got in touch with a former colleague of my brother, and she said that once after a corporate party, he took another employee with him. She remembered that her friend was very drunk at the time. The morning after the party, she could hardly remember anything about the previous night. This whole situation made me realize that my brother was never the person I thought he was. Hearing these stories, I'm now convinced that my brother poses a threat to those around him. Since yesterday, everyone involved in this case has gathered all possible evidence against my brother, and when we are ready, we will present all of this to our community on social media and to anyone who might find it important. I must also say that I have not yet talked about this with my parents. Tomorrow morning, I am going to reveal the whole truth to them and simultaneously issue an ultimatum. I also intend to say that if evidence is found that someone knew what my brother was doing but remained silent, they will also face consequences. I won't be able to provide updates for a while, at least until my brother faces the consequences of his actions. Not at all. I imagined the first weeks after the new engagement, but I can't just leave this information unattended. My fiancée was by my side at every step, and I also tried to be a support for her. In all of this, I can't imagine how she feels, but I'm also proud of her for not being afraid to face her trauma if it can help others. Second update. Hello everyone again. I know it's been a while since my last update, but I wanted to post a full update once the issue was resolved. What happened? Although it's not all over yet, I'm glad to report that my brother is finally facing justice for his actions. After my last update, my fiancée and a few friends started looking into my brother's life to find out if he had abused or tried to abuse other women. When all the evidence was gathered, we had to make sure he appeared in life, faced punishment. In the end, we discovered 8 different cases, including my fiancée, where my brother somehow harassed women. Among them were his ex-girlfriends, former colleagues, and 2 of his current colleagues. I also mentioned that when the evidence was ready, I was going to show it to our parents so they would realize what kind of monster they were protecting and publish all the information on social media. However, I did none of this because our lawyer talked me out of it. He warned that if I showed the information to our parents, there was a possibility that they might try to protect my brother and thwart our plans. At first, I didn't think about it because I wanted to bring our parents to their senses, but at that moment I could no longer trust them due to the possibility that they had previously covered up his actions. Moreover, publishing the information on social media could have played into my brother's hands, as he could accuse us of defamation, which would only complicate the situation. Therefore, the confrontation with my parents was postponed. I would also like to note that during that period, I completely stopped communicating with them so they couldn't ruin everything because I no longer trusted them. Here, I want to mention my sister. She pretended all this time to adhere to a neutral position, although in reality she was helping me and my fiancé. During this period, she found out what my brother is currently doing. The main thing she discovered. After the incident at the party, my brother moved to the other side of the country because he had a friend there. At that time, my family showed common sense and turned away from him. When he started living there, he told everyone that his family disowned him because they supposedly found out about his affair with his brother's girlfriend. Yes, that bastard dared to tell such a story about my fiancé. As I mentioned before, we didn't file a police report against him because on the night of the incident, I sent him to the hospital. Because of this, we couldn't initiate legal proceedings without risking me being held liable. That's why my brother was able to get a job and start rebuilding his life. He first contacted my parents at the end of 2021, during the most difficult period of the pandemic in our country. Since then, he and my mother have maintained regular contact, and my mom and dad even visited him several times. And finally, the most terrible thing over these years, my brother had a daughter. His daughter was born after a casual relationship. The girl got pregnant by him in April 2021, and they agreed to raise the child together since neither of them wanted to get married. In December of the same year, my daughter was born, my niece. My brother introduced his girlfriend and daughter to our parents and sister, 2 weeks before all the evidence was gathered. When my sister informed me about it, it felt like a punch to the gut. At first, I couldn't believe what she told me. What? My sister told me, but she showed me their photos. At that moment, my world was shaken again because now not only my family, but also his family would have to face the truth. However, then I realized that this child was another reason to continue seeking justice because we couldn't risk the girl or her mother staying in contact with my brother. My fiancé and I supported each other, and if this whole situation was difficult for me, I can't even imagine how it was for her. I am certainly not in a position to fully understand how she managed to cope with such a traumatic experience and find the strength to relive it in order to help others. The least I can do for her is to be by her side at every step of this process. And so finally the day X arrived. My brother was at my parents' house when the police came for him. According to my sister, it looked terrible. As soon as the police locked on the door, my brother tried to escape. The police caught up with him, and he tried to resist, which led to him being subdued with a taser, adding assaulting a police officer to his charges. 2 days later in the detention center, my brother was sent to jail pending trial. The trial was challenging, both in the courtroom and outside of it. During the hearings, 2 women who were victims of my brother couldn't hold back their tearful testimony. My fiancée managed to remain calm during her testimony, but when we were alone she broke down in tears and I started crying with her, but I was able to calm her down. The moment when my parents and sister came to testify was a turning point for me. This man finally faced justice, but he had already caused so much harm. I feel that many of the girls will not be able to completely forget what happened, but will only learn to live with this trauma. It was the hardest week of my life. But finally, after a long time, my brother was found guilty on 8 counts. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. Of course, he tried to drag me into it, citing excessive use of force for self-defense according to his lawyer, but the judge dismissed this claim. As for my parents and those who supported my brother, it will be difficult for me to never see them again, especially my parents. But I can no longer trust them. Although I am losing part of my family, my future seems bright to me alongside the woman I love. Now I feel like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I can only express gratitude and admiration to all the women who have suffered, as well as to everyone who shared similar stories in the comments on my posts. To all the women and men who have ever been victims of something so terrible, I wish you a peaceful life. And to all those who are afraid I cannot be in life, to say you are not alone. This situation has shown me that there are more good people than bad, and there will always be someone ready to lend a helping hand. Be sure to write in the comments what you think about this whole story. It seems to me that despite the number of crimes the author's brother committed, many would still face the dilemma of whether to turn him in or not. Because yes, despite the bad things he did, he is still a brother, and confronting parents is a very difficult decision in my opinion. What do you think? How would you act in this situation? Be sure to write this in the comments. Also watch our previous video, which you will see right here, and good luck to you.